You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. My guest today is Mark Astor from the UK, and he has founded drugandalcoholattorneys.com as a way to provide unprecedented legal representation to those suffering from mental health and drug and alcohol disorders. During his 22-year career, working almost exclusively in the criminal justice system, he realized that people rarely, if ever, commit crimes or wrongs for no reason at all. Imagine that. Many times the cause of the problem stems from mental health and drug and alcohol disorders, and as a result, a holistic approach was needed to provide effective counsel to these individuals. Welcome, Mark Astor.
Well, thank you, Dr. Callie Estes, for having me on. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. So I know we told everybody I'm originally from the UK, but just so you know, I'm actually located in Boca Raton, Florida, in case they think I'm still on the other side of the pond.
Well, I wanted everyone to know, you're a defectee to our country, because you have that accent that you kind of turn on and turn off.
I never noticed that I did that, but now you pointed that out to me. Maybe I'm going to become a little more aware of that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll take it as a compliment, especially coming from you.
It's a compliment. I went and bought one of those ellipticos 2 days ago, and the gentleman that was working on it, his name was Johan, and he had the coolest accent. He was from the UK, and I could have just talked to him all day long because it was such a cool accent.
But I bet his was thicker than mine. I've been here 30 years, so I tell people my accent's like my hair. It's there, but it's going slowly.
Yeah, his was very thick. It was like he just came over yesterday.
That's great. So I'm so excited to be talking to you. I love what you do, and it's always a pleasure to share some airtime with you. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. What I want to tell our listeners about a few things is first what you do, tell us what your specialties are, and then how you got involved in doing Marchman Act stuff.
So my law practice is really dedicated to helping people who are dealing with substance abuse and mental health disorders. And as you know, these things tend to go hand in hand. I mean, it's very rare to find somebody who has a substance abuse disorder that doesn't also have a mental health disorder. So because I have that sort of niche focus in my practice, sometimes that takes me into criminal court because, as you rightly pointed out, most of the people who are in the criminal justice system are there because they have these things going on. So I am either in criminal court or I am in civil court. So in Florida, we have a very cool piece of legislation called the Marchman Act, which is a statute that basically allows anybody with direct personal knowledge to petition the court and ask the court to order their friend, their girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whoever it is, to order that person into treatment because that person is either unwilling to go or they're just not capable of making that rational decision for themselves. So we enable you to go into court, make the decision for that person, and get them into treatment. Because as those of us that work in this arena know, there's really only one of three places that somebody can go when they're dealing with these issues: the morgue, prison, or treatment. That's it. Those are the only options. And if they're not going to prison, they're not in the criminal justice system, and they're not going to treatment, there's a very strong likelihood if they are an ongoing user that something terrible is going to happen to them. And right now we're facing this sort of national epidemic. We're losing, young people, predominantly those between aged 18 to 30. We're losing them, at an ever increasing rate because of this opioid addiction that thing that we're dealing with, this crisis. So my practice is really geared to helping those types of people.
So let me ask you this. So in Florida, we have the Marchman Act, right? But other states don't have that. What do some of the states have that's similar to that? And if they don't, well, what do they do?
So I believe there are something like 37 other states that have some type of involuntary commitment statute, and it's kind of all over the place. Some of them deal with substance abuse, some of them deal with mental health, and some of them deal with both. But there's really no uniformity. In Florida, our Marchman Act statute deals with both, because I think the legislature recognized a while back that you're unlikely to have substance abuse and not have a mental health disorder. So, I mean, we're somewhat unique here. And I don't know how many specifically of those 37 have what we have, but I do know that we're making a lot more use of the Marchman Act than we have done in the past because we know how important it is to get people into treatment. So, I mean, one of the things, I've sort of been crowing about lately is we need some type of federal standard, across the board so that one state starts to recognize an involuntary commitment from another state, because if somebody walks out of treatment here and they run to another state, there's not much we can do. So great. So they leave treatment in Florida and they go to Georgia and they overdose. We're sort of missing the boat on that. So it's not perfect. It's got some holes in it, but it's a really great start.
So let's say if you're a listener and you have a child in Utah, for example, and the child doesn't want to go to treatment, could you theoretically get the child to Florida and then you could Marchman Act them here on Florida soil?
Yes. So what is unique about the Marchman Act from a sort of jurisdictional point of view? A lot of laws require you to be, quote, a resident of the state in which the court is seeking to have a hold on you or jurisdiction over you. In Florida, with the Marchman Act, if your feet are physically in a specific county, I can file a Marchman Act on you. So something like 80% of people who are in treatment down here in Florida are not from Florida. The treatment centers are marketing to states, up and down the East Coast and even as far west as Nevada, Arizona, and California. And that's okay. But if you're going to bring people here thousands of miles from their home and there's no safety net, there's no recourse for the parents, it's a shame. So, yes, if you can get somebody from Utah physically in the state of Florida, we can Marchman Act them, and we can make sure they stay in treatment.
So what does that look like? Do you meet them at the airport? Do you bring the police? Explain the process. So if I'm a mom, I'm in Utah, I'm in New York, I'm in Philadelphia, I'm frustrated with my child, they won't go to treatment, they won't listen, they've been arrested, they've been Narcaned, I'm at my wit's end, and I call you, how does this process look like for me as a parent?
Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the person on the other end, that this child, is going to meet the Marchman Act criteria, which basically is that they're not thinking rationally, they are potentially a danger to themselves or somebody else. Now, if that person has already been OD'd and been Narcaned, chances are they're a danger to themselves and they're clearly actively using. So they would meet the Marchman Act criteria from that point of view. Typically, when I start the process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to either do a phone interview or I'm going to do an in-person interview. Now, obviously, if mom is in Utah, I'm going to do this over the telephone, which is fine. And we're probably going to spend a couple hours on the phone, and I'm going to get a full history of what's been going on here. I like to triage my cases, as it were, to use a medical term, and find out exactly what's been going on. What's the use? What's the drug of choice? How long has it been going on? What caused it? Is there a mental health component going on here so that we know what is the appropriate treatment? So once that's done, I'm going to draft a petition, which is the legal document which needs to be filed with the court, which gets the Marchman Act process initiated. And what's going to happen is that I'm going to draft this document. I'm going to email or fax it to you. You're going to review it to make sure it's accurate. You're going to sign it, get it notarized, and send it back to me. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to electronically file it with the clerk of the court in the county in which we're going to be filing this thing. It doesn't matter where I'm located. Once it goes through the electronic filing system. We can do it in any county. And then it's going to get reviewed. And if it's legally sufficient, the judge in that county is going to order the local sheriff to go and get that person and take custody of them. So the Marchman Act is a two-step process. The first step being basically a 5-day period of assessment and stabilization and maybe detox if it's needed. And then there's a treatment component to it. The first part of it, the 5-day hold, is done on an ex parte basis, meaning that as long as the document is legally sufficient, the court isn't going to concern itself at this point as to whether or not the other person is contesting it. So we file this petition. It's legally sufficient, and the sheriff is going to get that person, and they're not going to know it's done. It's done without them knowing, which is what I mean when I say it's done on an ex parte basis. The trick is to get the young person here. So if for some reason you can get them to come here for treatment, we can Marchman Act them when they land, and I'm pretty good at coordinating with the sheriff to make that happen. Or maybe you say to the loved one, hey, listen, it's been a long time since you had a vacation. I'm buying you a trip to Fort Lauderdale. I'm going to send you to Fort Lauderdale for a week. And I've already prepaid for a hotel, and here's the airline ticket. So you send off your loved one, your child, to Fort Lauderdale, and now I know where they are, and I'm going to send the sheriff to go get them when they land here. Sounds like a little bit of trickery, but yeah, I guess in a way it is. We're going to take custody of that person because otherwise they're going to get in Fort Lauderdale and start doing what they were doing before.
This Marchman Act actually sounds like a wonderful tool because I hear a lot of parents say, I just don't know what to do. Becky won't go to treatment. Bobby's refused to go to treatment. And what am I going to do? They're not homicidal or suicidal. I can't call 911, have them Baker Acted or 5150. I'm stuck. So this sounds like that tool is perfect for this type of family where there are no other alternatives and the child is a detriment to self or others.
Right. And that's typically the call that I get. They've read about me somewhere, or I've been fortunate enough to be on a podcast with somebody like you. And the family, they come to me and say, we've heard you do this thing called the Marchman Act. We're at our wit's end. We don't know what to do. And so the Marchman Act and the call to me is typically they're breaking the glass, right? It's an emergency. And they come to me when there's no recourse. There's nothing else they can do. And, we get the Marchman Act initiated to finally get them into treatment or to make sure that they stay in treatment.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a lifeboat to some people. And for others, it's a safety net, because sometimes after the Marchman Act has been initiated and they've spent 5 days in a period of assessment, and then we go back into court and we have a hearing as to whether or not treatment's going to be ordered. So at that point, there's going to be a hearing. Your child is going to be entitled to contest the allegations. They're going to be entitled to a lawyer. A lot of the time, once they've been assessed and stabilized and detoxed, they start to think a little bit more rationally, especially when mom or dad is on the other side of the courtroom and they realize that they need to do this. And part of it, I think, Callie, is the psychological aspect of somebody else making the decision for them, right? They haven't had to make that decision because, when you're dealing with someone who's addicted, there's this sort of conflict going on in their head. They can understand they need treatment, but the subconscious mind loves safety. So their safety is using, right? That's their status quo. So there's this confrontation going on within the person's head. Now I've taken that away because I've made the decision for them. And, most of the time it's almost a relief for them. Very rarely do I have it contested. Sometimes it happens, and that's the case, then we're going to have a hearing and we'll prove our case. But a lot of the time, once you make that decision for them, they've had a chance to just sort of let things calm down, and they've had that assessment. A lot of the time they go willingly. So we've had great success with it. And, I think it's a lifesaver.
Now, what if they don't go willingly? What if you have this hearing and the judge says, I'm going to order you to X amount of treatment, and the person says, well, I'm not going? What happens?
I haven't had it happen yet, but in theory, if it were to happen, then the judge is going to say, look, I'm making a finding that you meet the criteria. I'm ordering you into treatment. Now, if you don't go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold you in contempt. And under, the civil contempt authority of the court, they can be sentenced to 5 months and 29 days in the county jail.
Oh, wow.
So it really is leveraged treatment. Look, for the most part, if you're in the county jail, and I say this tongue-in-cheek because I've had clients tell me that even in the county jail they have access to drugs, but that I think is more prevalent in our state penitentiary system. But for the most part, if they're in a locked-up, secure jail facility, they're less likely to, much less likely to overdose than if they were, out in the streets,
right,
having access to opioids. So, yeah, I mean, it's leveraged treatment. And the judges will say to them, look, and even if they agree, Callie, what the judges normally says is, look, I'm letting you know that even though you're agreeing to do this, you're under a court order. And if Mr. Astor comes back in here and tells me you haven't complied, I'm letting you know, I can send you to jail, and I will do if you don't comply with the court order. They know from the get-go, even though they're going voluntarily, if they walk out, there's a chance they're going to go to jail. And, nobody wants to go to jail. So they'd rather go to treatment than go to jail. I've never had anybody say, yeah, they want to go to jail as opposed to treatment.
Right. Well, that's kind of you can go to treatment where they have nice, warm running water and good meals and cute girls in yoga pants, or you can go to jail where you get bologna sandwiches, cold showers, and Bubba.
Right.
Your option.
Exactly. Bubba, you got it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then if you've ever been to the county jail here in Palm Beach, as you walk up to the door there, you can hear the screams. It sounds like a lunatic asylum. It's not a fun place.
Yeah.
Not a nice place. Trust me, the treatment centers, even the worst of the worst, are much nicer than the county jail.
Well, one of the things I'm going to do with this podcast is I'm going to have all my students that study intervention with me listen to this and talk with you and meet with you, because I think nobody really understands what the Marchman Act is in my colleague side. So people that are studying intervention or counseling or coaching in addiction don't know what this is or how to use it, especially if they're not in Florida. And they don't understand that if they're in New York or New Jersey and they're trying to do an intervention on Becky or Bobby and get them to treatment, this is an added tool that they can use. Because in the intervention world, one of the things we use is the bottom line. Either you go to treatment or you're homeless. And for a lot of people, that's not a big deal. And they say, so what? I'll be homeless. I will go to the Salvation Army. I'll couch surf. I'll hang out with my friends. I'll hang out with my boyfriend. That's not really a big threat. But having this tool in their toolbox when they're doing an intervention or seeing a client or watching a client relapse, now they know they can call you and say, I need your help. And here's the problem. And I think it's such an underutilized tool because so many people in other states don't have it or understand what it is they have or how to access it.
Yeah, and I think for your interventionists, they don't have to, and they shouldn't counsel the families on sort of the legal aspects of the Marchman Act. They should let me do that. What they can say is, look, I'm doing my thing, my intervention thing, and I'm going to help you with that. And that's what you hired me to do. But you should have a chat with this lawyer because you may have some other legal options that can help you to get a better result. And let me talk to the family about the Marchman Act. I mean, as I've told other treatment providers, I say, listen, that's why I pay a premium for my malpractice coverage. Let me give the legal advice. You're not insured for that, right? I don't give treatment advice. Don't give legal advice. Let me do that. But I think that in terms of just building value for the clients that you're doing interventions for, I think you can say, look, we might have another option on the table. You should speak to this lawyer that we do work with to see if there's any kind of legal avenue that you can pursue that's going to help you to get a better result.
I think that's great. And then I also know you have other services besides Marchman. Tell me about the other services that you offer.
So one of the other things that we do, even on the sort of civil side of things, is I work with a lawyer who's part of my team, and you can see her on my website. Her name is Audra Simovich, and what Audra does is I have her do my guardianship work. So a lot of the times we will file what we call an emergency temporary guardianship, which we sort of piggyback on the Marchman Act petition. It revolves around the same facts. It's typically heard by the same judge, but it gives a different type of relief. And what it does is it's going to give the family not only access to the medical records, because if they're over 18, you don't automatically get to see the records, but it's going to give them control over their medical decisions. And thirdly, if they're somebody who is depleting potential financial resources, maybe they have a trust fund and they're depleting the assets to feed their habit, we can get control of the financial aspects of their life too. So that is something that we routinely do with the Marchman Act. So it really is a great sort of package of legal services. But on the other hand, on the sort of other side of the courthouse, as it were, is the criminal courts. And so I spend a lot of time in criminal courts because that is where I've spent the majority of my time as a lawyer, helping clients to fashion sort of a treatment remedy. And sometimes that involves, working with professionals like you, but invariably, these folks that are in the criminal system, if they haven't committed, something heinous like a murder or a rape, the judges are looking for a reason to keep them out of the system. So as I like to say, some clients are still savable, right? If you can get them into treatment early enough and they're not too far gone and the crime isn't too heinous, you can get them rehabilitated and give them an opportunity to become a productive, tax-paying member of society and of the community. So I spend a lot of time in the criminal courts, trying to fashion that type of remedy for clients who maybe have done silly things, but their motives have been, substance abuse and mental health driven. That's sort of the other half of my practice.
Okay. So I heard you say trust fund. Now, I do a lot of work with trust fund kids. usually want to rip my hair out. And the one thing I find is that the trust is a royal pain in the ass. It just is. I was doing a sober on demand, my signature service where I fly out and I do the alternative to treatment, one-on-one, 10 days. And this person was drinking and using all kinds of drugs. And I said to the trust, we need to go now. We need to get the mobile detox, blah, blah, blah. And it took the trust 11 days to sign the documents and get us out there. So can you speak to that a little bit? How can you assist with that kind of thing? Because I know a lot of my students deal with trust and we want to rip our hair out.
Okay, so in terms of getting control of the trust, is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Like they just don't, the person that's in charge of the trust, the banker, doesn't understand addiction. They don't understand this is, now or never. This is not something we can talk about, review, and have 6 attorneys review a contract and decide and then release funding. This is, we have to get this done now when it comes to putting people in treatment. And they just drag their feet with it consistently.
Right. I think when it comes to the whole trust issue, I think that sort of goes hand in hand with the whole guardianship aspect. I think that the family who is sort of, trying to intervene with you, using you as the sort of interventionist, has to sit down with our guardianship lawyer and say, look, we've got this trust here. We want to be able to get control of it. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. A lot of the times it depends on how the trust is set up. But obviously, if you're getting that person into treatment and it's leveraged treatment using the Marchman Act, their ability to just access those funds is certainly diminished considerably. If you don't do something, they're going to be, running around depleting the assets. So, and the other thing is it depends where the trust is. Obviously, if it's a Florida trust, we can help them. If it's a trust in another state and that we're not licensed, we're going to have to bring another counsel, which we're fine doing. But then we got to find local counsel and, work to get control of the trust that way. All these things can be done as long as we sit down with a family and we give them options and we sit down and work out a plan of action. It's no different from what you do, right? You're going to sit down and work out a treatment plan. We're just doing it from sort of the legal aspect. We're going to sit down with a family and say, look, we can do this, that, and the other. Here's the plan of action that we recommend. And you just let us know what you want to do. So, all these things can be accomplished. It's just a matter of sitting down with a family and giving them all the options. So that's what we try to do. We try to give them the full service, like the full menu of options, because sometimes we sort of lose sight of the forest for all the trees. That's why we spend, a lot of time at the beginning of the case sitting down with a family to find out exactly what's going on. And you got to ask the questions, how is this person funding their habit? Do they have a trust fund? Are they stealing from grandma's bank account or mom's bank account or whoever it is? You need to know all these things. But if you don't ask the questions, then you're leaving money on the table, as it were, in terms of the client not getting their bang for the buck, and you're not offering the client the right remedies.
Right. Okay. Well, these are great services that you offer. I don't really see a whole lot of attorneys playing in the Marchman Act arena. It's like they don't know what to do with it or see it as a trusted resource. Have you noticed that? Are you one of the few?
I only know of 2, maybe 3 other lawyers in the whole state that even touch the Marchman Act. And as far as I'm aware, they don't go into the criminal arena. So, I think if you don't do criminal work, I think you miss the crossover, because some of the criminal clients are also Marchman Act clients. And I've always said I think you use the Marchman Act to get somebody to treatment that may be facing down the road, criminal sanctions. So to me, what I do, so they sort of work well together. Yeah, there's very few lawyers doing this. And I was at a dinner last night. There was 30 people in the room, 30 lawyers.
I'm just going to stop you. Every time I talk to you, you're at a dinner or a lunch function. You should be 350 pounds by now. I
work out a lot.
You're like, I'm going to a lunch. I'm going to a dinner. I'm going to a snack.
Though, I don't eat pizza when I go to these lunches. I have a piece of salmon and vegetables. That's the difference. And
then you're Krav Magaing here and there and martial arting and CrossFitting and my God.
Do I need to remind you of how much time you work out too? You don't look like you're out of shape either. I see your photographs.
That is my outlet when I'm dealing with clients. If I'm at the gym more than once a day, I had crazy clients that day.
Okay, fair enough. I'm first thing in the morning kind of guy. I got to get done in the morning, but it does get me fired up. But no, look, I listen, this is the way I network a lot of the time. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I obviously don't do drugs. So, I still go out and I do this thing and I speak to people, but I'm eating healthy, because otherwise I would be 350 pounds. And then I wouldn't have a suit that fits me.
I interrupted you. So tell me about this dinner you were at last night.
So, look, it was...
Wait a minute. What did you have for dinner?
Seriously, I ordered a Caesar salad to start with, a small Caesar salad, and I had a piece of salmon, just plain grilled with just some veggies, and that was it.
You need
That's
to
what I
start
had.
a whole separate company on teaching people how to go out and network and eat healthy. Because every
didn't
time
eat the
I go to a
bread.
function, it's like it's crazy. Cheesecakes and all kinds of crap.
Don't eat it. You don't have to eat it.
I've got one coming up on Friday, and the menu, it's a prefixed menu. It's calzone. You got to hear this. Calzone, which is, you know what calzone is?
It's like spaghetti and cheese and
No,
sauce. And...
it's dough, like pizza dough. Inside, it's got cheese and
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a pizza stuffed inside a big lump of bread.
Yeah, that, cheesesteaks, and Twinkies. Do you know what Twinkies are?
I know they're fattening.
I'm like, what am I supposed to eat? Like, it's that. That's what they're serving. I'm like, what on
That's not
earth?
good.
No, so I have
That's
to
not
eat
good.
before I go and have an iced tea for 3 hours while I network. It's crazy.
No, listen, sometimes I do that. Look, I turned 50 years old at the beginning of the year, and I know I have to be careful what I eat. I mean, I lived on beer and pizza in college. I can't eat like that anymore. So
You look great for 50.
I'm trying. Well, I've got Peter Pan syndrome too, so that probably doesn't help. I'm trying to stay young forever.
Oh,
So
yeah. So it'll happen, like you'll turn like 70 and all of a sudden you'll go from being young and virile to like, oh my God, you're old. It'll just happen that way.
yeah, and you'll probably be the one to tell me as well. Remind me.
will.
Meanwhile, you'll still be working out twice a day and look exactly the same.
I'll remind you as it happens. And I'll say, hey, we're getting
Okay.
old over there.
Yeah, you and your husband will still be RVing all over the country, and I'll be looking on Facebook like, doesn't she ever sit still?
You'll be back there moving tires around with your CrossFit. I never understood that. You guys move tires from one end of the street to the other and then back. And I'm like, why?
I'm not flipping any tires. I'm just doing lots of push-ups, all right? That's much easier for me. I stopped flipping tires a long time ago.
Oh my God. I tried to flip one. I'm like, to forget it. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But anyway,
Sure.
back to what we were talking about. So you went to a networking event last night. You had salmon. I think you had cheesecake, but that's beside the point. And you
All
had
right,
salmon.
I swear I didn't, but okay.
Okay. So tell me what happened at the networking event.
So listen, it was a room full of about 30, 35 lawyers, and we each, there was 3 of us that got to speak. So I got up, I had 6 minutes to give my pitch, and I talked about what I do. And, afterwards, most of them came up to me and said, we never heard of the Marchman Act. So it's not just members of the public that don't know about it. I mean, I really think that outside of the treatment world and the intervention world, people they've never heard of the Marchman Act. And we have, it's been on the books since 1993, and no one's heard of it. And I don't know why that is, but people don't know. So I spend as much time educating other lawyers as I do lay people about what we can do to help them, because we can help them. So I guess that's why I'm eating a lot of salmon and vegetables.
You're running around telling everybody and spreading the word like the town crier.
How about that? Yes.
Well, this is going to be perfect for the students to take my classes, because even at the PhD level, even the doctors that take my classes, they don't know what the Marchman Act is. And I just taught intervention last week, and I was talking about Marchman, and the one person goes, well, isn't that a 5150? And I said, well, that's a Baker Act. That's a little different. And they said, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, this is for drugs and alcohol. And they said, well, I don't understand that concept. And I said, well, if someone's mentally crazy, we can throw them in for 72-hour hold, right? That makes sense. But what if they're drug and alcohol induced crazy? That's different. What do we do with that? How do we get them to treatment? Because a psychiatric facility is not the right place for a heroin addict. So what do we do?
Right.
And they all stared at me. And I had one that's a CEO of a treatment center in Denver. And he goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I said, it's a piece of paper. It's a court order in Florida to send them to treatment. And he said, never heard of it. He goes, if people don't come, they don't come. And I said, well, what do you do if they don't come? He goes, we do an intervention. Well, what if the intervention fails? Well, then, that's their problem. And I said, well, what if you could theoretically have them arrested and put in treatment? And he says, that'd be fantastic. I said, well, we have that in Florida. We have that ability. Tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can find you.
I'll give you my phone number, which is my office line, which is 561-419-6095. So it's 561-419-6095, or on my website, which is drugandalcoholattorneys with an S.com, drugandalcoholattorneys.com. And it's Mark Astor, Astor.
Sounds good. Well, I thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me on. I always enjoy your company and chatting with you. You make me laugh, and also you're just a wealth of knowledge. And so, from professional perspective, I have nothing but respect for you. So, and thank you for having me on.
Well, I appreciate it. And
Nice
you guys
to talk to you.
Listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach in the Addictions Academy. And check out Mark Astor and his website and the services that he offers. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be awake, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that